First to Canberra, where the opposition appears set to deny the government the help it needs to reinstate the Malaysia solution. The Prime Minister needs coalition backing to resurrect her offshore processing policy. But Tony Abbott's hardening his line, claiming the government's plan goes against the national interest. Here's Hayden Cooper.
For a year now, the government has tried to send one consistent message about Tony Abbott.
And those opposite, of course, said no, 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 no and no.
But now, bound by a High Court decision she did not expect, the Prime Minister's plan to process asylum seekers offshore rests on her opponent saying yes.
The Leader of the Opposition should instruct members of the Liberal Party and the National Party to vote in favour of this legislation and to vote in favour of the national interest just for once.
Yeah. Even to her own backbench, it seems fanciful.
I would not bet my house on Tony Abbott being bipartisan. The best guide to future behaviour is past behaviour.
The government is waiting and hoping that the man who's been trying for a year to destroy them will suddenly have a change of heart and wave through the amendments to the Migration Act. This week, Julia Gillard started in all-out attack mode, trying to bludgeon the opposition into submission.
Bleat, bleat, bleat from the opposition. Why do they come into this place and play this cheap politics with national interest?
Then she adopted a more cajoling tone.
I'll be asking the Leader of the Opposition to deal with those amendments in the national interest.
But as her language shifts, so does his. The opposition leader will be briefed by department officials tomorrow, but he appears less likely by the day to say yes.
Good policy is Nauru, temporary protection visas and turning boats around, and if the Prime Minister wants to put good policy in place, she'll get support from the coalition, but she can't expect the coalition to support bad policy from a bad government. And I'm saying to her that if she wants us to support policy, she'd better get her policy to resemble what we think is in the national interest. Yep.
Government ministers believe the opposition will eventually be turned by the compelling logic of their case. Many of the best legal minds in the country say Tony Abbott's plan to use Nauru for offshore processing is also ruled out by the High Court decision.
The Leader of the Opposition has a different plan, and his different plan is about Nauru, but that too, to be beyond legal doubt, would require legislative amendment.
A lot of industries have been.
For the moment, the government is talking about the two issues on which the coalition is most comfortable: border protection and the carbon tax.
The final test is, are you on the right side of history?
Yeah. There is no doubt about the fate of the Clean Energy Future bills or about the way the opposition will vote.
Now, my message to the workers here and to the manufacturing workers of Australia right around our country is you are not on the wrong side of history.
But Tony Abbott has some real and pressing problems of his own in this area. Major business groups are beginning to line up against his direct action policy. The Australian Industry Greenhouse Network, which represents miners and manufacturers, has adopted the Treasury view that it'll cost far more than the carbon tax.
The coalition, with no purchasing of international permits, will cost, on our estimations, about $48 billion to the year 2020 to Australian taxpayers, and that will mean that by 2020 people will be paying $1,300 more per household per year to meet the coalition's silly policy position.
The whole point about our policy is that it's capped. We will spend up to $3.2 billion over the forward estimates period on our direct action policy. We won't spend a dollar more than that.
In both policy areas, the Prime Minister is playing the long game, banking that her dire position will in time turn around. Tony Abbott, on the other hand, has one strategy alone: demolish the government as soon as possible. He knows that border protection is a problem for the Prime Minister right now, and not a problem for him unless he wins government. Until then, Julia Gillard gets the blame, so the smart money is on the opposition leader saying no.